The small joys of living alone. Hey and welcome to this video. This is episode 24 of my series where I talk every day, unscripted and unedited on a topic. About 10 minutes or so to practice my speaking. And today's topic was another one generated by an AI analysis of my transcripts. Although this time I asked it to be a bit more positive. It is a bit more of a positive topic, but in some respects it feels as though it's mocking me, talking about how I live alone. But I don't really think that's a bad thing. So let's talk about it. I've lived alone ever since I bought my house in 2021. It's a 3-bedroom terrace house, or it might be called a townhouse by some people, overseas I believe. But until that point I'd always lived with other people, so of course that was my family when I was young. It would have been other students when I was at university, and once I'd finally graduated, at the age of, Christ, was I 26 or something in the end? I can't quite remember that age. I lived with basically random people in a house of multiple occupation setting. So I'd rent a room in a house. I'd have the room to myself and there'd be a shared communal area, shared bathroom, shared kitchen, but I just had the room to myself. And you get no say in who you live with. It's just random people at the time. And this was probably the worst setup, I think, because people are there are some really strange people out there who have some unusual habits. So I'll quickly go on to an immediate tangent about a housemate I had as soon as I moved into my first HMO setup, and that was I unpacked all my stuff in the kitchen, went into my room, unpacked everything, went shopping, and by the time I got back, someone had completely destroyed some of my cooking stuff. I don't know how they even did it. Everything was just completely ruined. It was all burnt, covered in burnt food, and there was no saving it. So yeah, that brings me to the first point of living alone then. You haven't got other people using your stuff. So when you live alone, you go to work, you go to the shops, anything along those lines, and you come home and everything is exactly how you left it. There's not a situation where someone has moved your stuff around, someone has moved things, and not necessarily your stuff. So let's say you have a family. You, of course, communally own, let's say, the cooking items, but you know where everything is going to be when you come back from work. And that's really helpful when I guess I perhaps could argue that I've got some sort of obsessive disorder in that respect, in that I like things being, where they're supposed to be. I wouldn't say I'm some sort of tidy freak kind of person, because that is most certainly not the case. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I like the peace of coming home and things being where I know they're going to be. And that, I suppose, leads on to the next point. Christ, I thought this would be easy to talk about, but I should really have thought up some points ahead of time before I started recording. But that's the purpose of this video series. I know even towards the end, some of the episodes are going to be me just talking about random nonsense and forgetting my original plan. So anyway, one other point about living alone then is there's nobody there to judge you. So I could come home, I can just put all my clothes on the floor if I want to, go and have a shower, something along those lines, and there's going to be no one to judge you. I could sit in the living room and just get trashed out my mind if I wanted, and there'd be no one there telling me that that's a very poor life decision. I can get up and have my early routine, and there's no one there to tell me or to be annoyed. And I suppose that's one thing I don't like. I don't like to cause issues for other people. I like to live a peaceful life whereby I'm just doing my own thing. I'm not bothering anybody else. I'm fairly anonymous in the background. Perhaps I'm almost like an NPC in that respect. I'm like the background character, just getting on with things, not bothering others. And that just feels so fulfilling for me in some respect, that I'm just doing my duty really and not causing any hassle. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, some people don't really see things that way, and perhaps they themselves don't realise that they're being a giant pain, because going back to the nightmare years of living in a HMO situation, most of the time people try to just keep to themselves. But when there's that one person who is not keeping to themselves, they come in, they basically take over all the communal areas, they set it all up in how they like it. They just are incredibly noisy. They invite random people over as if it's their place. And I guess the room is their place, and I'm not really in a position to argue. I could do the same thing if I wanted, but I think it's very, I don't know, I think it's very, very rude not to consider other people's, opinions and such, and, not leaving people to get on with their own thing. But I suppose different people are raised differently. Like, you'll find this at university, perhaps. So when you move into a shared accommodation at university, there are people who are raised differently to you, kind of like feral animals who don't look after themselves. Oh, pardon me, I shouldn't have sworn there. Who don't look after themselves, who don't really know how to tidy up after themselves. I had a housemate at university, and he got to third year, and he had to admit to me that he didn't know how to put his bed sheet on his duvet cover, so I had to do it for him. I tried to teach him, but he just wouldn't do it. He was from a fairly wealthy background, so he'd always have someone else do it for him, and he didn't see it as something that he should have to do, like put his bed sheet on his duvet. So half the time he just never washed his bed sheet or his duvet, or he just slept under the duvet somehow, which I think is very, very uncomfortable. So yeah, I'm getting massively sidetracked with this. So other simple joys of living alone. I've talked about my morning routine in the past. I've talked about how people don't judge me. What other joys are there? I suppose in some respect there is the ability to, like I said, have things how you like them, decorate things how you like them. If you wanted to have some sort of absurd pet, now I'm not really a fan of having pets, to be honest. I've got no real interest. I see how other people do, like, they could have a normal pet, for example, have a dog or a cat, or perhaps something more exotic like a snake or something bizarre like a big spider, and it's their choice, I suppose. Like, it's not the kind of thing that interests me, but yeah, you're not causing any trouble to other people in that respect. And I mean, talking about it, it sounds like a lot of the simple benefits of living alone are that there's no one to bother you. You can have a peaceful life, or indeed a chaotic life if you want. Like, I've seen, this doesn't apply to me, I've seen news stories about people who just turn their houses into art exhibits, something along those lines. You can decorate however you want in that respect, but as a frugal loner, perhaps I'll do a house tour one day. You can all see how I live in my house. It's there's basically nothing there. I think a lot of people would think that I'm some kind of psychopath in the fact that I have all my empty rooms. Although actually, they're not all empty. There's some rooms which have things in. You'll be glad to hear. So one thing I found perhaps unique to me is that I have 3 bedrooms in my house. So that's 3 beds set up for guests. So 1 for me, 2 for the guests. And of course I don't have any guests. The last time anyone came to my house apart from me was when my mother briefly visited last year in the summer. So that was in June, I think, last year. So it's been a while. But I have these bedrooms set up still. So one thing I used to enjoy doing when I was trashed out of my mind on a Friday is treat myself to sleeping in a different bedroom, because that's something that never really occurred to me to do before in the past. And it is a bit strange because you think you're doing something different, a nice treat inside your own house. And then, because I was trashed, you'd wake up in the morning and be like, wait, where am I? Why am I in this bed? Something along those lines. Because I usually wouldn't remember actually going to bed in a different bed. But, it's all these little weird things you can do. I could walk around without wearing any clothes if I wanted, and it wouldn't be too unusual, because there's no one there to judge me. So yeah, I suppose that's what I have on this topic, really. Like, I should really think of what to say before starting to record these topics, but I do want each one of these videos to be a bit of a challenge in some respect. If I get too comfortable with things, I just say the same thing over and over again. Like, perhaps I could talk about my fears of AI over and over again, and different ideas I have concerning AI. But yeah, I want this video series to challenge me a bit, and again, it's just for me to practice until I can start making regular videos. I'm really looking forward to that, and in some respect I've been thinking, well, why haven't I started making some already? Actually, I need to start the process, have a process, and get used to it. On one other note, if you're interested in my life at the moment, perhaps I can refer back to this. I have submitted my application for my AI apprenticeship that my employer offers. I don't think I'll get it, unfortunately. There were about 60 people in the initial consultation meeting, and there are only 25 places. I've submitted my application, but I fear that even though I'm one of the lower ranked people who have applied, there are some really senior people who I'm aware have applied. I might seem a bit too competent for it, because it's supposed to be someone with a poor technical background or a low technical background. You know, the kind of person who's only really just discovered, you know, that you can send memes to people on the internet and upload videos. They emphasised quite a lot in the questions that if you score too highly, then you won't get the apprenticeship. But we'll see what happens. I'll know by the 3rd of March, but at least that's one weight off my shoulder. I can think about other things now, like new video ideas. But yeah, thank you for this. Sorry that I went massively off topic and didn't really talk much about the topic itself. But thank you for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow.